Hi, it's Dennis Daly. Did you ever want to go to Houston in the stickiest, steamiest part of the year? Well, I did back in the late 1990s at the invitation of Uncle Ben's Rice. Did you know there really was an Uncle Ben? Of course, there wasn't a Betty Crocker or an Aunt Jemima, but there was an Uncle Ben. And I went to Houston to find out. A couple of weeks ago, I got a call from one of the advertising agencies. A good friend of mine named Melissa, she said, "How would you like to go to Houston?" I said, "Fine, what's down there?" What a dumb question. She said, "How about visiting Uncle Ben's Rice?" Rice is becoming more and more a part of the American diet, so I figured, why not? Let's talk about nutrition, let's talk about rice, let's talk about fun, and some of the new ways of preparing what is a very, very old dish. One of the fellows at Uncle Ben's who is largely responsible for developing new products is Chris Keegan. I sat down in the test kitchen and talked to him about the way America's attitude about rice is changing.
Well, the idea behind rice is it's fat-free, it's hyperallergenic, there's virtually nothing in there but pure carbohydrates, and that's very healthy for you, and that gives you fast fuel. So it's not really just kind of like the potato. It's not really the product, it's what you put on it. And since rice adapts to so many flavors, that the need for fat is really not there.
You were talking about adapting to flavors. Is it jambalaya I'm thinking of, that the reason you cook it is that whether you're using crawfish or chicken or whatever, that eventually the rice takes on that flavor?
That's correct. Right, exactly. You cook rice in a liquid medium, and anything you put into that medium, if you use like a chicken stock or if you were to use a fish stock, no matter what you would, the rice will begin to pick up that flavor. That's what makes rice so great. That's why chefs love it, because it adapts to anything.
Well, let's talk about you. How did you end up down here? Before going on the air, you said that you had grown up in Michigan in the Midwest. How did you finally, 20 years ago, end up in Houston? And what kind of training did you have to do all this?
Okay, actually, I've been a chef by trade since, the early 70s. So it's been really nice in the respect that I graduated from school in 71. I did a lot of time as a chef up in the Midwest. And
you said a lot of time. That almost sounds as if you were in San Quentin.
Well, no, I don't. Not at all.
But you worked hard in the beginning.
I very worked hard coming up through the kitchens. I had the training, but quite frankly, when you start in restaurants, you really have to prove yourself. So then 20 years ago, I got married. My wife and I decided, well, we'll move to Houston.
Wanted to be near humidity.
Yeah, needed to get away from those cold northern winters is what I think we had in mind. But Houston was a boom town then. I came down and really took off. My career took off as a chef in the restaurants during that time. And then about 9 years ago, I applied here at Uncle Ben's. They were looking for someone who could work with food and understand the culinary aspect of the product. So I've been working here ever since.
You know, it was so interesting to walk in this building. The decorations inside are absolutely friendly. I love the color scheme. Uncle Ben's is such a well-known company. There's just something neat about finally seeing the headquarters and walking in and say, hey, this really exists here.
That's right. Well, Uncle Ben's has been around a long time, and it's got to be a household word. I know as a chef in the restaurants, which really made it neat to come to work for a company, I always used the product. We always used the product. It was always there because I knew that no matter who cooked that rice, it was going to come out right. So it was always kind of fun to come to work for the company.
Isn't consistency really what this is all about?
Absolutely. Consistency is the number one thing, besides taste, that I believe people, especially in chefs and restaurants, look for. They have to have something that's going to be the same every time they cook. And they have to have that margin of error built into that product so that when a cook, whether it's a morning cook or a night cook, makes that product, it's going to turn out the same.
Well, you know, I've kind of answered my own question there, but it's always amazed me how in a fine restaurant, or even just a neighborhood restaurant for that matter, when you go in and you order a dish you've had before, the usual thing is that it's going to be the same. Exactly. You want it to be the same. It's only when you say to yourself, boy, I wonder if they've got a different chef working tonight. But you have to have the raw materials in a restaurant to be able to depend on the fact that it's going to be the same. I mean, you can't, the consumer comes in for a specific thing and they know how it tastes and that's what they want.
That's right. And one of the things that we try to build into our products, especially our food service products, is that we give a boxed seasoned rice an excellent flavor and it will stand alone, but it's still liquid enough where the person or the chef can add their own personal signature to it. So that way 80% of the consistency work is done. You cook our product, you got the base, and it's a matter of adding a few extra things to it to bring it your own signature.
We are talking to Chris Keegan. When I hear at Uncle Ben's you have this wonderful test kitchen area, just let you go and say, hey, Chris, call us when you get something new?
Not all the time. Usually it's a timeline I have to work on, but I do. The company's been great. They've given me a tremendous amount of creative freedom, not only in product development, flavors, but also in the recipe development.
Well, now, I'm looking at some things that I didn't know you guys had. You have, I'm thinking of rice products, but you've just got an interesting array of all kinds of other things here that I hadn't thought about. But you have to. I mean, a company has to diversify.
We have to diversify. We're becoming more and more known as a food company rather than a rice company. We're part of Mars, which is an international Mars Candies. We have food companies all over the world. Some are under different names like Master Foods, but we're all tied together. So a lot of our technology comes from overseas, and in turn we send our technology over to them.
This may sound like a really naive question, but for someone out there who has always been afraid to cook rice, and maybe fear is not the right word, but it's either going to be too runny or it's going to be too sticky, is there a combination? Is there a simple recipe? X cups of this to water to that? Is there an easy formula to remember?
Okay, I know what they did. I used to do it for years. The trick with cooking plain rice, even Uncle Ben's, is there's no peeking. Uncle Ben's calls...
No, you mean once you put the lid on it?
That's it. Don't look until it's done. It's fine. Leave it alone. I ran into this problem again. The rice will come out sticky. Uncle Ben's calls for 2 1/4 cups of water, 1 cup of rice, a little bit of salt if you like, pat of butter if you like, bring it to a boil, drop it to a very low simmer, and we consider simmer a very light boil. Put the lid on it and don't touch it for 20 minutes. And what you'll get perfect rice.
This reminds me of the way my grandmother would cook a whole chicken. She would put it in a pot and bring it to a boil, if I remember, and put the lid on it. And I remember as a little kid, when I was tall enough to safely remove a lid without it being dangerous, she would scream at me, "You don't open the chicken."
That's right. So true. But that's the whole idea, because otherwise it's starchy. And if it's done and the 20 minutes is over with, and you pick up the lid and you see there's still liquid, a lot of times if you just cover it and set it, let it set for 5 minutes, that water will be absorbed and you'll have perfect rice.
You know, I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but I was having a conversation before we went on the air about the fact that kids aren't learning to cook anymore. I'm thinking maybe a family that wants to pass down its traditions, or a parent who may find a few minutes to show a child how to cook, that using rice is a simple way to bring some fun back into the kitchen, because it's not complicated.
No, it's not, and it's simple to prepare, and use the seasoned rices. You have wonderful flavors, and you only have to add a few things and figure out what would go with that for the evening in the way of meat or other vegetables.
In the time that you've been at Uncle Ben's, what, if anything, has changed? What are you seeing now as the thrust of your research or merchandising that has come about just since you've been here?
Well, I think it all boils down. We look at the two main things people look for in a product. One is taste. And they're looking for more and more natural taste. They not only don't want preservatives, they don't only want artificial coloring or anything like that. They want the flavor of that product to be tasty and natural. So that's one of our main thrusts, and we always use all natural ingredients. The other thing is that they're looking for is convenience. People do not have time to cook. Dennis, when I go home, I don't have time to cook.
I wouldn't think you'd want to cook when you got home.
Actually, I love to cook. On weekends, I can spend the whole weekend in the kitchen just cooking. But when I get home about 6 o'clock, my wife has dinner on the table. It's one of those times I don't have time to cook for the family, and that's when we go out to dinner.
Well, I have such a great respect for chefs. I remember about 10 years ago, I was with a group of guys, mostly in television and radio, and we just decided to get together in the Rockies for a week, kind of a retreat. We found out that some of the ski lodges that are $1,000 a week, $1,000 a day or $1,000 a week in the off season, they just want people in there. Mm-hmm. So it's very affordable. And about midweek, we're sitting around saying, well, what are we going to have to eat? And one of the guys said, well, you know, I used to be an executive chef. We went, oh, really? He fixed Thanksgiving dinner for us,
and it wasn't even close to Thanksgiving. But I was watching him work, and I thought, I guess what I do in broadcasting I do pretty quickly, but I had never seen anyone juggle that many pots and pans of stuff at one time. It was almost like a circus routine.
Yeah, it really is. I know. They always say, well, how do you do that? It's very simple. You get on a food line where you have 300 orders in about 2 hours, and you'll either do it or you'll die. Or you'll...
Chris, is it premature here in the interview to talk about this new product you have here? I want to grab one of these and bring it over here. Uncle Ben's has what's called a rice bowl. Now, I've seen this type of thing merchandised. There's a chain of restaurants on the West Coast now that does this. Why didn't somebody think of this before? I'm glad Uncle Ben's did, but it seemed as if it had been a product in waiting for a long time.
Well, anytime you come up with a product, you want to make sure what you're developing is you're seeing the development of a trend, something that's going to last. To invest that much money into a product that you don't think is going to be popular is, not a good thing. So what we come up with Uncle Ben's is we come up with a line of rice bowls. Now, what a rice bowl is basically a bowl with a base of rice and then with different toppings on it. Now, we've come up with 10 toppings that we're selling. These are absolutely delicious tasting. They're wonderful. They were easy. It was easy to put my mark on these things. We had the flavors are not only delicious, they're diversified. We have 10 altogether.
Well, I just now noticed you have, for my sake, one of each flavor here.
Right.
Now I know why. There's 10 of those over there.
Right, exactly.
Let's see, this one is chicken and vegetable, and you sure picked a good partner, Tyson Chicken.
Right, that's great. We've just been partnering with them, and it's just been great. Their company is absolutely the best market for chicken. They're great with chicken, and combined with our rice, we really have a great product.
I've only had breakfast. Can we try one of these?
Absolutely.
Let me pick. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Go ahead. Pick one out.
I think I'll. Well, now, let's see. That's got mushroom. I just can't stand. Is there anything that doesn't have something that doesn't have any mugu?
Mugu? You betcha. Here.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, mugu gaipan is chicken with mushroom, and I remember a friend of mine going into a Chinese restaurant ordering mugu gaipan with no mugu. And so
let me have you try one of our favorites, our most popular. It's the spicy beef and broccoli.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what's nice about these products is, from freezer to table is 6 minutes.
That's it?
That's it. In the microwave, and they're ready to go. And all you have to do is you have to take it out of the package, and you just make a little hole in the saran wrap. And then we just take it over to the microwave, put it in, 6 minutes, we hit it.
That's it, huh?
And that's it. These are absolutely wonderful flavors.
So it's completely self-contained. The only thing you might want to do is maybe season to taste, maybe a little soy sauce on one of them, or I'll have to see how this tastes.
Right, you don't have to. These are really well seasoned. They're excellent, and not only that, they're 98% fat-free.
Oh, heavens. Now, one thing, I like this whole concept. You see a lot of people who are at the office who are doing those cup of noodle kind of things, where here, every office has got a microwave. This is like going out to a restaurant.
Absolutely. That's what's nice. You can take these to work with you. We found that there's a lot of use in them, young kids taking them to school with them because there's microwaves at school. And with the price at $3.29, it's very affordable.
Well, now, it's a frozen or just a refrigerated product?
It's a frozen product, and it's a large portion. These are 12 ounces. That's a full meal. And what's also we like about it is that the calories are low. There's only 380 calories in one of these.
Wow.
There's a couple little over 400, but on an average only 380 calories.
Let's talk a little bit about food safety. You were saying taking to school. It's if something is frozen, there's no problem then putting it in your lunch bag or your backpack in the morning?
Well, I would definitely recommend using a little from one of those little cooler bags.
Okay.
Definitely. Okay. You'd want to keep it very cold, but as far as thawing out a little or the frost breaking out, there'd be no problem at all. We always like in food safety, we always want to keep that temperature below 38 degrees, and you wouldn't have any problem with these.
Well, Chris, the microwave is about to ding. Why don't we stop and eat lunch? Well, this week we are on the road again, and that is exactly what I like to do best. I got a call from Melissa at one of the advertising agencies the other day saying, the people at Uncle Ben's would like for you to come visit Houston, and I jumped at the chance. Houston is a wonderful place, a little steamy, a little tough at rush hour, but some great people here. Also some magnificent arts, great sports, two wonderful airports, and an awful lot of great food. And Uncle Ben's is right in the middle of that. You know, rice is becoming more and more a part of the American diet. Part of it is the fact people are realizing that it's good for you and is very, very healthy when you look at all of the aspects. But also, you'll have to pardon me, we've been eating here, so if I sound as if I'm smacking my lips, I am. Also, it is a wonderful product that is very much a part of ethnic cooking, and as there are more Tex-Mex restaurants opening up and people discovering that cuisine and many of the Asian dishes that are coming over, we're seeing more and more rice being eaten. We are in the test kitchens of Uncle Ben, and Chris Keegan is my host. The man who is responsible for many of the new flavors and the rice bowls we've been trying. And I mentioned that at one time I had been working for the agriculture department, and food safety was a very, very important issue. And I know that at Uncle Ben's it's a big issue also. And food safety is part and parcel and sanitation of what they do.
We're all inspected. We're inspected by the federal government to make sure that our properties are clean, and of course we are very much want that. In fact, our standards at Uncle Ben's for all our food safety is well above what the government requires.
Boy, I'll tell you, this is only, we've got a couple of minutes left. It smells so good in here already.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does.
It smells good enough to eat.
Let me show you the other flavors we have.
All right.
In this. Now, we have a chicken and vegetable, which is it's a very, very nice flavor. It's very home style, nice poultry seasoning type background. We have a teriyaki stir-fry vegetable, and we also have a Southwest black beans and vegetable, which are completely vegetarian.
Well, that's good. There's more and more of a demand for that. I mean, I'm not a vegetarian myself, but I'm always pleased when I go into restaurants. For example, I have not been to one this time, but I'm a firm believer in Luby's cafeterias whenever I'm down here in Texas or Oklahoma. And one of the platters they have is you can get all vegetables. And I thought, well, that's kind of, somebody put some thought into that.
Absolutely. There's nothing... I mean, I enjoy completely vegetarian meals myself a lot. We have teriyaki chicken, Szechuan chicken. We have a barbecue bowl.
Ooh.
And an Indian bowl, a chicken Bombay, which is a light...
A lot of people love curry.
Right, and this is a nice light curry for those who...
Yeah, sometimes you can get curried to death.
Yes, or curried wrong. Yes. And then we have a honey Dijon bowl, too.
During your career as a chef, how much of the influence of other cultures have you seen? I'll answer part of that question myself. My little hometown in Indiana now has a Tex-Mex restaurant and a Chinese restaurant. And please don't think I'm racist. I'm not here. But 30 years ago, I remember my dad wouldn't go to anything other than an American restaurant. Why do we need this foreign food here? This is stupid. But yet we become such a polyglot, complicated society. It's showing in our cuisine now.
Absolutely. Without getting too complicated in this, the idea of a trend has to follow an influx of an ethnic group. And so this is why the influx of the Asian people coming into this country, coming to America, their authenticity of their cooking stays solid, and it's all over the country. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to see where you can go to like a small town in Indiana or a small town in Texas and get real Thai food. Mm-hmm. And of course it influences us chefs tremendously because we have to keep up on this. I spent most of last year studying the Asian cuisines just to keep up our market, and so I can adapt our products to fairly authentic type Asian recipes.
Well, it's all a matter of being introduced to things. Absolutely. I mean, there are those great stories about the fact that even though World War II had a terrible downside to it, the guys and gals from this country, many of whom grew up in little farm cities, who went to Italy or went to Asia, went around the world, sampled the rest of the world, and then brought that desire back with them.
Exactly. In a society now where we travel so much, and then we have the internet that brings us right into your home, so you can see these dishes that are on a menu in another country and say, gee, wonder if I can get that here in America. And so these things are starting to come. We're becoming a very fusion society.
We are in the test kitchens of Uncle Ben's Rice on the edge of downtown Houston, and they have been showing us around this wonderful facility. One of the things I noticed when I walked in was the color scheme and the friendliness of everybody who works here. It kind of comes off the walls at you, the beautiful decorations and the artwork, and everybody is here to have fun and put out a wonderful product here at Uncle Ben's. Chris, let's talk about the Uncle Ben's image. I know it's interesting over the years to see how some products have changed their image. For example, Betty Crocker is much younger than she was in the photo. Aunt Jemima fits less of that old mammy mold, which a lot of people objected to. The one I don't like is Colonel Sanders. I knew Colonel Sanders. The new cartoon character is too young. Colonel Sanders couldn't dance. He was on a cane. He was 65 before he started his chicken. And the guy they got to do the voice of Colonel Sanders, that's not a Kentucky accent. But Uncle Ben's looks the same as he did when I was a kid. Can you tell us, it's a magic story about this fellow. There really was an Uncle Ben.
That's correct, yeah. Back down here in Houston in the early 1900s, this was all rice country. And that's one of the reasons they actually built the plant here in this area. And there was an old farmer named Uncle Ben, and he grew the best rice in the region. And it got to the point where people would bring their rice in to sell and say, hey, this rice is just as good as Uncle Ben's. And so as the reason converted rice first came in is because this process was, the Army was looking for a rice that was nutritious, that would cook separately, cook easily, and would hold for long periods of times. And this is when converted rice was born.
We should explain that. Converting rice is doing what?
Parboiling it. And
so it's partially cooked to start with?
Actually, it's cooked. And what's the amazing part about our converted rice process is that as the rice is cooked, it's steamed inside with the bran layer. So actually 80% of the nutrients of the bran layer are actually cooked into the grain of rice. So it actually has more nutrition than plain white rice. And it also cooks up firm, separate.
When I confuse the issue here to ask what's the difference between brown rice, wild rice, white rice, and long grain rice?
Okay, long grain rice is the type of rice. That can be brown rice. Okay, brown rice is the rice kernel before the bran layer is taken off of. Okay, wild rice is actually a grass and grows up in Minnesota and parts of California. That's actually a grass more than rice. It's not actually a rice product.
It's like Chinese, those little Chinese ears of corn aren't really corn, I don't think. Or are they? They're cousin anyway. But what you're saying is wild rice isn't really rice. Long grain rice is just a type of rice, and brown rice still has the bran on the outside.
Once you take the bran off, it becomes white rice.
I hope there's not a quiz, because I'm really not thrilled I asked this question. Okay, the conversion of rice was to parboil it, but there was a rice grower here in the Houston area, an older fellow named Uncle Ben,
right,
who just knew how to do it right.
He did it very well. So after the war, Mr. Gordon Harwell and his partner were sitting up in their favorite restaurant in Chicago, and they decided it'd be great to come up with, since we had this process, to go ahead and begin to sell it to the American public. Well, Uncle Ben had died years before, but they had a friend up there who was a maitre d' at the hotel, and they asked him to pose for the picture. And they took his picture, and he is still on the packages today.
So that's why he's wearing that neat collar.
That's right. That's right. He was actually a maitre d' there at the hotel.
But in this area, it's like saying this is the Cadillac of farm implements or whatever. They use the name Uncle Ben to be synonymous with the best you could get.
Exactly. And that's why they chose, that's why they called the rice. The original name of the company was the Converted Rice Company. And when we went public, they changed it to Uncle Ben's Converted Brand Rice.
Is it distributed around the world, do you know?
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. So you could, chefs all over the world know Uncle Ben.
Yes, they do. Mm-hmm.
You certainly have a beautiful color box. You know, so much of merchandising is impulse buying, but it's like Kodak Film has their own color yellow, and Southwest Airlines has their own color. Lord knows what that color is. Planes. You couldn't miss that box of Helen Keller could buy Uncle Ben's rice.
Orange and blue have been our colors for many, many years. Oh.
Well, Chris, let's look behind here. Let me let you walk over to the stove. You have an honest-to-goodness stove over here. I want to spend just a few minutes talking about the more conventional kind of products. You have a product which basically you still cook in a pot or a rice cooker.
Oh, absolutely. This is what our line is all about. We have a line of seasoned products, seasoned rice products, where the seasoning pack is right in with the rice. And what we've been launching now nationwide is a line of upscale rices called under the name Chef's Recipes. We have 3 of them: a broccoli supreme, we have harvest rice pilaf, and a fine herb risotto, which is actually made with with the real arborio rice. So we're launching these. They're great. They're upscale. They're definitely the quality. In fact, in our chef's recipe line, each product is endorsed by a chef here in the United States, a famous chef. And they really endorse the product and like it, so they gave their okay to the flavor system, so we went ahead with them.
Well, now, your rice bowls are the simple ones that you put in the microwave for 6 minutes. Thank you, Susan. The lovely, is it Roush? I've got it right. The lovely Susan Roush is bringing us, you ought to get a job on on Wheel of Fortune, some of these chefs' recipes. This is simple, easy to read instructions. Oh, I see, and you've got, this one is endorsed by Chef Wayne Gibson of Newport, Rhode Island.
Correct, and this one is, I believe, is our recipe by Bruce Molson, who is a chef of a very fine chain of restaurants here in Houston. His flagship is Ruggles.
We are the guests of Uncle Ben's Rice, and the great story we've heard about how Uncle Ben actually existed as a rice grower, and his product was so good everybody said, hey, my rice is as good as Uncle Ben's. And so when the rice company we know as Uncle Ben started after the turn of the century, they picked Uncle Ben, a real person, as the model for the company, and it's not his picture, but I hope you heard the neat story that we have been told by Chris Keegan. We are in the test kitchens of Uncle Ben in Houston, and I continue my conversation. Well, Chris, let's wrap things up with a few basic questions here. Let's talk about nutrition first. I do a lot of reading on airplanes, and I really think that people need to learn what a wonderful staple rice is. I mean, I'm not trying to do your PR for you, but I think it's something that more people who are health conscious should consider adding to their diet.
Absolutely. And rice consumption's gone up. It's up to almost 25 pounds per person per year. So rice consumption's gone up in this country. People are starting to see the benefits of this, and it's also something different from their normal diet.
Now, with the regular Uncle Ben's, what is the ratio again of rice to water if you're going to cook it in a rice cooker or a pot?
About 2.25 cups of water to 1 cup of rice.
2.25 cups of water, 1 cup of rice. Maybe I can do it right the next time.
Just don't peek. Once it's simmered,
leave, as my grandmother said, don't take the lid off the chicken. Right. So what's next? You have, I guess you're just going to see how this goes. You've gone national now with the rice bowls. Yes. It's a fairly new product, isn't it? Very
new product, yeah. We launched them here in Houston for about 9 months and had incredible success with them. So this year, as of May, we've gone nationwide with them.
What is it like to be associated with a company that has this much of a nice, clean, friendly image to it? I mean, you can't travel anywhere without seeing your product.
No, it's nice. It's a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoy working for this company, and it's always fun to see a product that you've helped develop, and you get out there in the marketplace in a city as far away as New York, and you go in the grocery store and you see something that, hey, I had something to do with that product. So,
by the way, looking on here, I assumed you would have a number if people want information. It's 1-800-54-UNCLE.
That's correct, and that's our 800 line, our consumer helpline, and you can get a friendly voice at the end of that who will help you through any of our products.
And you have a website, www.unclebens.com.
Right, and our website's won awards. We have several.
I can't wait to get home and look at it.
Yeah, really, it's great. One of the things it has is what we call what's in your cupboard, and you can literally punch in what you have on hand, and the website will bring up a recipe using one of our products.
Oh, wow. Chris, this has been great fun. I'd like to thank you very much for showing us around here. Susan Roush with Murphy O'Brien for making the trip possible, and I'm dying when I get back to L.A. to try some of your other flavors.
Well, great. Please. Great. One of the things it has is what we call what's in your cupboard, and you can literally punch in what you have on hand, and the website will bring up a recipe using one of our products.
Oh, wow. Chris, this has been great fun. I'd like to thank you very much for showing us around here. Susan Roush with Murphy O'Brien for making the trip possible, and I'm dying when I get back to L.A. to try some of your other flavors.
Well, great. Please do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The story of Uncle Ben's Rice. I'm Dennis Daly.